Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Peter Strong. I'm co-owner and director of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City, South Dakota. On behalf of our entire team and our community, I want to welcome all of you to this exciting presentation that's part of our new program that's actually wrapping up this weekend for the season called Winter Camp. And we're wrapping up today with an amazing session by Waln. At Racing Magpie, we're dedicated to elevating and amplifying Native and other artists and their communities through educational, cultural, and research programs, all in the Lakota spirit of being a good relative. As part of that being a good relative, this program, Winter Camp, will reimagine the Lakota Winter Camp model of problem solving and community building in today's world by digging deeper into Lakota beliefs, creativity, culture, and community understandings. While all these events are open to the entire public, they'll always center and uplift Lakota community members as both presenters and attendees. As plants and trees focus their energy on building strength and growing from the roots during the winter, our community will join to strengthen and grow together each year through sharing and learning. Part of my job is to thank our sponsors, and I want to thank specifically the South Dakota Humanities Council, which is an affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Bush Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Humanities with a direct grant as well. Also, we've been asked often how our supporters can contribute to our work. I would suggest at least two ways in these times of virtual working and community care to do that. One is you can make a donation to Magpie Creative, which is our nonprofit partner in our work, and you can donate through their Facebook page or mail in a donation. The other way is to support Native artists directly and makers and creatives by searching them out, buying art from them, download their music, buy gifts for others or for your self-care for yourself, but buy directly from the artists as well. Venmo and PayPal are artist friends, and they come in really handy in these times. Today, during Vi's presentation, she's graciously welcoming questions and comments. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can type them into the chat. You can raise your hand. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, feel free to type questions in and I'll relay them to Vi as we go. If you have any other questions, just feel free to reach out to us. And without any further delay, I want to hand this over to Vi Waln.
Itakipi, Chante Washte no Ičađapi Kte, Chante Hukeshniwi Imacha. Good afternoon. My name is Waln. I am Sicangu Lakota from the Rosebud Reservation. I live in the Hidalgo community, and today I want to talk a little bit about how food and plants are actually medicines. So next slide, please. Okay, there's the first slide. That's just got our logo. And this first slide is of an unchi, excuse me, a picture I found on the internet. And she's holding, in her right hand, she's holding a turnip braid, a wild turnip braid that she harvested and put into a braid. That's just got our logo. So, and this little table she's got in front of her, I like to imagine there's either corn drying under there or chokecherry patties, maybe. So next slide, please. So this photo is a picture of the wild rose bush that grows all over Rosebud. It's what the Rosebud Agency or Rosebud Reservation was named for. It grows in abundance on out here where I live. It actually grows along the creek. It comes in a variety of colors, and it's really a good smelling flower. But of course, every rose has thorns, so be careful when you're touching the shrubs. Next photo. This part of the rose is called a rose hip. It's high in vitamin C. We like to use this part of the rose bush in a lot of the medicines that we create, both here and in New Orleans, Louisiana, where my mashke does a lot of this work with me. So next slide, please. This one is one I pulled off the internet. It's a picture of yarrow. Yarrow grows pretty profusely in our area, and it's a really good toothache medicine that I've used. Next slide, please. Here's one of my most favorite plants. It's a mint, a wild mint called, some people call it bee balm or horse mint. In Lakota, we call it Waičaја Ičađapi, and it's called perfume. You can crush the flowers, the fresh flowers in your fingers and rub them on yourself. Or even if you pick the fresh flowers in the summertime, bring them in your house and put them in water, and they last a really long time and make your house really smell good. It's kind of got a lemony smell. So next slide, please. This plant is called bush morning glory. It also grows really well here on the Rosebud. This is a great big one that grows by my house, kind of up on a hill, and it blooms maybe late July, early August, but the flowers are really smell good. It really smells good, and it only blooms in the morning. Sometimes it'll stay bloomed if it's cloudy. And this is actually a medicine plant that's used by some of our medicine men, but that is knowledge for them to carry. And I just wanted to show you this plant because I think it's really cool. It can get really big. This one right here is probably like 4 or 5 feet across. And so, yeah, that's the bush morning glory. Next slide, please. Here are, some of you know what it is. It's harvested turnips, harvested timsila. These vegetables grow underground, and they are harvested in June, late May, early June, depending on how cold the weather's been or how early of a spring we've had. This plant can be harvested on the prairie. You can see the plant there kind of sticking out of that white bucket. It's got kind of a furry stem. There's flowers sometimes bloomed on it, and then the long roots there, you've got to harvest it real careful so you pull the roots out so you can make braids out of this and store it for use later. So next slide, please. I've worked with young people on our reservation for a few years now, and this is one of the activities we've done every year since I started doing this work, is harvesting the timsila. Here you see in the upper left, the young lady is braiding the turnips after they've been peeled and cleaned up. And then on the bottom left here are 2 of my grandchildren with their finished timsila braid. And this in the background is Hidalg community. So next, I'd like Peter to bring up a video that was made for me by the South Dakota Change Network. I've worked with plants for a long time, at least 20 or 30 years now. But in 2017, 2018, I became a part of the first cohort of the South Dakota Change Network. And we each worked on a project that we wanted to bring more awareness to or whatever. So I chose the wild plants and wild foods, and the Change Network sent a cameraman out in the summertime. It was actually the hottest week of the year, if I can remember right. And we did some work with some youth in the community. And so Peter will share that video with you, and it lasts about 8 minutes. So just sit back and eat your popcorn if you have it. Thank you. My project is going to focus on knowledge about our traditional medicine plants, our traditional plants, flowers, fruits, one right there, and other wild foods that we've used for hundreds of years. I want to show young people the proper way to harvest these plants and how to identify the plant, which plant is what it's called in Lakota. Like this morning, we went out and looked at echinacea, and the Lakota word for that is Ičaǧapi. I want our young people to understand that we can have our own medicines, we can grow our own food, we can get back to that healthy space where our ancestors were. And it just takes a little work sometimes. And then we could probably dig around it a little bit more. So we gotta go a little bit deeper to get. This is knowledge that our ancestors left us. And we were put on these reservations that some people call prisoner of war camps. And we were each given a number on a tribal ID. And the intent was that we weren't supposed to survive, but we're still here. And we survived because there was a grandma or an auntie who remembered to tell her little takoja that this is what we use the turnips for, or this is where you find the choke cherries, or this is how you make choke cherry patties. And then they'll keep all winter, and then when you need to have ceremony in the middle of winter, you'll have those patties all ready because you can't buy them in the store. And I said, well, if you don't learn this, then you're not going to know it when you're my age. You'll have someone who knows about this plant, but they don't know about this plant. And another person will know about this plant. Someone else will know where all the timsilas grow. Someone else will know where all the grapes are, or where all the raspberries are, or where to get those medicines like hops. We have hops growing here on our homelands. And where the sage grows tallest, some of the people will keep those places secret, so to speak, because they don't want the whole crop to be exploited and all cut down, and so there's nothing there for our grandchildren that are coming behind us. Yesterday we were in St. Francis, at St. Francis Indian School, and I went and talked to a group of young boys who had harvested several wild turnips the day before. Food sovereignty is when you can feed yourself without going to the store. That's pretty hard, you think? Because we all go to the store for our food. So when you want to feed yourself without going to the store, you have to go get food like this. They brought the turnips in, they peeled them, and they prepared the roots to braid them, and they made their own little braid of timsila. Now, that's a food that is being harvested now by a lot of people. When I was a kid, I didn't see as many people harvesting this wild food, but now I see a lot in every community. So I talked to the young men yesterday and told them about how it was important to make a relationship with that vegetable and have good thoughts while they're creating this braid. And then that braid of turnips is there for mom or grandma or auntie or their sister to cook. They can hang it in their house, hang it in their kitchen, and it's just going to be there. And every time they look at it, they can think about the time they went out and dug it and how that felt. And it's a food that's always going to be there. These junk foods that are being processed and sold in the stores are made with foods that are man-made. Basically, there's a lot of things put in there that are addictive. And when you eat unhealthy food, you create or you invite all these illnesses like diabetes or high blood pressure or cancer or heart disease. All those things our people are suffering today.
We're standing in the Waičaја Ičađapi Community Garden, Turtle Creek. It's a 1 acre market and teaching garden. So we do some of it to grow like intense agricultural production for farmers markets or to get into some local grocery stores, restaurants, etc. And then half of it also is more like a indigenous teaching garden where we're planting out heirloom seeds from our region, and we'll be kind of donating all that food out to the community.
It's really hard to change our habits, but I believe that if we help our young people understand that the food they eat is what's creating their ailments, they might plant gardens and grow their own food and maybe start canning their own food so they'll have that all year round.
So we're kind of working on two levels. Is one, we need more food, so we're just trying to grow as much as possible, but then also you know, like this morning we had about 15 young people working. We want to work with people to teach so that this can spread, because we know that our little site can't do everything. You know, the point is kind of to inspire and then send people out to do that work.
Sure. Thank you, Mike, for allowing us to come here today. My name is Waln. I live in the Hilo community. I've lived here all my life, and I am a part of the South Dakota Change Network. Well, the Change Network encouraged me to pick this work back up because I was doing other things with my life, and it encouraged me to go in and ask the school, can I come in and share this information with the students? And I think changing how our students view their plants, how they view their food, how they view their water, that's going to be a major change down the road.
To me, it's really encouraging that she's taking the time to work, especially with young people. I think they have a lot of respect for her and see her as somebody of stature that they should listen to, and that makes that message even more powerful.
We can look to our plants to learn a lot, and we have to make a relationship with them in order for them to keep coming back. So I really appreciate the Change Network for giving me this opportunity to not only meet other people and talk about my passion, but helping me to share this knowledge with my younger relatives here.
Am I back? Can you hear me? I was muted there for a while. So yeah, that was the video that the Change Network created for me, and I've shared it with a lot of other people. I think it really highlights the work that we've tried to do here at Lakota Wellness Society and the work that we're continuing to do. So this slide right here is a photo of a local garden where there was a big tomato crop there, and you could see they used the wire rack kind of as a place for the vines to crawl up. And this garden had a whole bunch of tomatoes. So I just wanted to include that. That's from the community garden, the Waičaја garden that you saw in the video. So next slide, please. Our work also includes showcasing vegetables and other things that people have produced here on the Rosebud. This photo is from the 2019 Rosebud Fair, where we hosted the garden contest or garden show. And here are some of the vegetables that were judged and awarded ribbons. You can see some jars there, some tomatoes there in that lower right-hand corner, and jars in the middle, and then jars on the other end. So a variety of locally grown produce was brought, and then they also brought their canned goods. Next slide, please. And even a flower, somebody brought their flower there. I think that was a geranium. But here's another table with more vegetables, and you can see the squash, you see a timsila braid there, corn down there, and that little basket kind of at the end of this first table is full of pears. There was a family in the Swift Bear community, Horse Creek area, and they grow pears. They have a pear tree, and I was kind of amazed that they actually grow pears that were really big. And there's potatoes back there in those Ziploc bags, kind of on the bottom middle left of this photo. Tomatoes, squash. Next slide, please. Here's another shot where you can see those pears in that basket there. Pumpkins, peppers, a gourd there in the middle, and just a lot of squash. We grow a lot of squash here. The climate is just really good for squash, pumpkins, things like that. Next slide, please. Here's the adult table with the traditional foods. And you can see the sage, there's buffalo berry jelly, choke cherry jelly, wild plums, wild currants, choke cherries, and the best of show ribbons went to, I think that's a choke cherry patty there, kind of on the right side. The one up in the upper left is an herb that I didn't know grew around here, and I apologize, but I can't remember what it was called. But those herbs, most of those herbs were harvested in that Swift Bear Horse Creek area. Again, these wild fruits were taken in Spring Creek. So next slide. Here is the youth table where the best to show all went to canned goods, processed choke cherry patties you see there in that Ziploc bag right in the front. And then in the back, you've got choke cherry jelly, and I think those are mushrooms with the bigger jar. Those are mushrooms. But these were all in the youth category. So we've got young people who are interested in these kinds of things. And they work in the summer to get all these produced. They bring them to the contest at Rosebud Fair, or they sell them to get a little spending money, or they save them for the winter foods, for ceremonies in the winter. So next slide, please. Now here's a big fruit here. People from here know these are choke cherries. They grow wild. And these were choke cherries harvested near my home here in the Hidalgo community. And I cleaned them up, took all the leaves and stems out, and then we processed them through a grinder, a hand cranked grinder, and we run them through the grinder twice, and then we make patties out of them, like you saw in that little Ziploc bag. They're like hamburger patties, and then we dry those. And then we can put them either in a jar when they're completely dry and save them for winter puddings, Ičađapi, can make jelly out of them, wasna. We can make all those things with the frozen choke cherries, the choke cherry patties, the dried patties, or the frozen fresh berries. So next slide, please. Here is a slide of my sister, and I took this picture at Standing Rock. My sisters put together a ceremony to pray for the water during the No Dapple protection camp there. And we needed choke cherry wasna for the ceremony. So we made do. My sisters went out and found some big rocks because we didn't have any grinders with us. And she pounded cherries with those 2 rocks. And that's what we used in the ceremony food that time when we went to Standing Rock at the No Dapple protection camps. So it was quite an experience. And it shows you our people can make do even in contemporary times. She went out and found these 2 rocks and proceeded to process the cherries for ceremony. So next slide, please. This is herbal cough syrup that we also use choke cherries for. You can kind of see the ingredients on there that go into this. It's a whole lot of herbs and honey and juice, chokecherry juice, elderberry juice that goes into this. And it's cooked over a fire. You put all these things in one of those big cooking pots. Canning pots is what we use, those blue porcelain ones. And we cooked them outside. We made the cough syrup outside over a propane fire, a portable propane stove. And my friend and I, Ann White Hat, she brought all the supplies, and we went and did that workshop for one of the kitchens there. And a lot of the people in the camp actually came and took part. So next slide, please. And this next slide shows you all the finished bottles that we made there. You can see the kitchen in the background, but I don't know, there must be 12.5 quart jars of the cough syrup that we made for the camp, and then some bigger jars too. And all of these were distributed to whoever wanted them. I think we gave some to the medic camps that were there. We left some with the kitchen where we cooked it, and then the rest went to elders. So next slide, please. This is Mashke and White Hat. She was cooking all the syrup in Winona's kitchen. You see the banner in the back there. And she's actually adding honey into the syrup. I mean, into the cough syrup, yeah. And then after that, it's processed and put in the jars like you saw before. So next slide, please. This is the echinacea plant that you saw in the video. And this plant, I know an area close by my house where it grows, there's a big crop there. And we harvest this every year. You saw how we pulled one of the plants out of the ground in the video. And this particular flower right here in the picture is actually one plant. If you dig this one up, it's going to have a real big root. It'll probably be 1 to 2 inches in diameter. And when you harvest these plants, especially the medicine, well, all plants, but the medicine plants especially, you have to talk with them. Tell them that you need help and ask them for help. It's like I mentioned in the video, you have to make a relationship with the plant world, the plant nation, because they have a consciousness and they have awareness. So that is where their healing properties come in. You have to take an offering of tobacco. We use tobacco. We approach the plant in prayer, asking for help, giving thanks to the plant for sacrificing itself, and ask it to bring the healing properties that it grows for. Ask the healing properties to stay in the plant as we harvest it and take it home. So this was one of the first plants that I worked with when I first started this I think it was in the 90s when I actually started looking at plant medicines. So we went out and harvested a lot of this. We've made tincture with it over the years. Some of it we put up for sale. Most of it we use for ourselves. But I use the whole plant. And I take the whole plant, the flowers, the stem, the leaves, and the root, and put it in this big, I don't know, half-gallon jar maybe. And you can see in there maybe some of the flowers, the flower tops. The stems are mostly what you see on top. The roots are still in the solution there. I'm not sure if you can see the roots, but it's all just kind of stuffed in there. And the liquid is organic sugarcane alcohol that we put all the plants in the jar, just kind of stuff them all in there after we washed them off. And then we pour the organic alcohol in there. And I know that some people might have a different view of alcohol because of the problems that it's brought to our people. But I believe that the sugar cane organic alcohol is something that was made by those companies or those small businesses that sell it with a different intent than it would have been made for, to go out and just use, to abuse and use and drink. So, and my intent is for healing. It's not for any kind of to prolong any illness or anything, but this is an alcohol-based tincture. So I can strain this liquid off and put it in little dropper bottles. But first, I usually take 1 part tincture and 3 parts purified water to dilute it down to where you can put it in these jars, these kind of jars, maybe a dropper jar. And people can use for, this is really good for cuts or scrapes, or even to use every day as to strengthen your immunity. It's a really good antibiotic, I guess. It's healed cuts and bites and things that my grandchildren have had. And we also used it for teething medicine. We diluted it a little more to use it for teething medicine, maybe 1 part tincture to 8 parts water. And then we just take a little bit on our finger, just wet our finger with it and rub it in on the baby's gums. And that really helped. It really worked better than the ones that we bought over the counter. So let's go to the next slide, please. Our program was founded, the Lakota Wellness Society was founded to help our people learn about plants and foods as medicine, basically, to teach our young people how to harvest the turnips and find the cherries and things like that. But when the COVID-19 pandemic reached our reservation, we had to switch gears and stop the programming and start responding to emergencies, start providing some kind of relief to people who were out there in the communities without, sometimes they don't have a ride or sometimes they don't have access to medicine. The Rosebud Sioux Tribe issued a shelter-in-place order in March 2020, and that order still stands today. Everything was basically closed to the public, and people were kind of asked to stay home. Now, some communities actually had lockdowns when there were outbreaks in those communities. So next slide, please. Here's a picture of Wayne Frederick from the Oak Creek community. He's actually the tribal council representative from Oak Creek now, but he has a small business called Res Raised Beef, and it's organic raised beef who are grass-fed. He's standing right here at the checkpoint into the Spring Creek community. This was the first community that had to be locked down because there was a big outbreak there in May of 2020. So next slide, please. I worked with Wayne and his wife, Alex, to put together these food bundles for the elders in Spring Creek when they were locked down for, I think, 3 or 4 days in May. But we both contributed ground beef. You can see the ground beef packets there, and potatoes. So those bundles were there. We had to leave it at the checkpoint. And then the community officers or the police officers had to come and take it down into the community. So the community chair people or the community council representatives could distribute it to families. So that's what we did for Spring Creek. Next slide, please. There was another lockdown kind of reservation wide it was later that month in May. And we were all asked to stay home. There was a curfew in place. We couldn't be out on the roads after 10 o'clock. The stores had to close at a certain time. So we solicited for donations to provide these little bags to elders in our community, elders or people who we knew were sick with the virus. We had a little thing of laundry soap, toilet paper, Kleenex, hand soap, dish soap, paper towels, and some hygiene supplies. You could see in a little bag there on the side. It's got yellow trim. But we took these to maybe 30 houses in our area and just distributed them to, it was mostly elders that we gave these to. So the next slide, please. And we didn't forget about our young people during this COVID response. We put together these little art packs. We got a grant from Indian Collective in Rapid City to buy some of these supplies that we distributed to the houses in Hidog. These art kits went to, I think, 80 children in the Hidog community. So next slide, please. These are supplies that came from New Orleans, Louisiana. This was part of our COVID response. We worked with an organization called Delta Roots and White Hat Botanicals. And this was all organized by my good Moshke and White Hat. She lives in New Orleans, Louisiana, and they have access to a lot of things right there that I'd have to probably drive to Rapid City or Sioux Falls to buy. So the white bottles, I think there's like 9 in each box. They packaged these up and mailed them to me. This is elderberry syrup. And this syrup we put in kits, our medicine kits, to distribute again to COVID positive people that we knew of and people who were exposed to the virus. And we also distribute these to elders on the reservation. We didn't have very many elderberry syrup. And this syrup, we didn't have very many. So we made it go around as far as we could. And this is like a tonic or like cough syrup, but better. Cough syrup on steroids, maybe. A lot of people really liked it. And they said that it really helped them with their COVID symptoms. So that was one item in our medicine bundles. Another item you can see around the edges was the Breathe Easy respiratory salve. I don't know if you can read that label, but this salve was made to use like as Vicks to rub on your chest. And this one is just a little like a pop-up. You just kind of push it from the bottom and it comes up and then you can just like rub it. You don't even have to touch it. This was an upgrade that they did from New Orleans. First, they were sending us jars and Anne wanted to find a different way that was more eco-friendly. So she found these tubes. So she switched to the tubes and they're a lot lighter. They're easier to carry. You can put them in your purse, put them in your pocket and just use them as you need them. So here also on the sides, you see these Ziploc bags with tea. This is the Take the Edge Off, it's called, but it's a tea for a restorative herbal tea blend for grief and heart healing. So this was put together to help our people who were mourning relatives who were lost to the virus. We lost a lot of elders. We lost a huge group of Lakota speakers. And so it's still a really a hard time. People are still mourning those relatives who are gone. And this is a safe tea for mostly everyone. And this was part of our response bundle. Another thing that was in the bundle was cedar tea. You could either steep it as a tea or burn it and purify your house with the fumes. So that was another part of that response. And basic things that were in those kits were face masks, cloth face masks, that we got from the Indigenous Environmental Network donated us cases of these. So a lot of people got to use these on Rosebud. Other things that we put in there were hand sanitizers that Delta Roots made. They came in little sprayer bottles. This is a citrus scented one. Here's one that's lavender scented. And they have alcohol, vegetable glycerin, hydrogen peroxide, and that lavender essential oil. So these were, a lot of people got these on Rosebud. And then of course we had to have another basic thing, another basic is needed essential was toilet paper. So all of that went into these bags and they were distributed around the Rosebud. So next slide, please. So this slide is a picture of the bundle with everything in it. The syrups were, there was also fire cider in these bundles, but I don't have any bottles to show you of the finished product. They were in bottles like this, the fire cider bottles that we distributed to people. So next slide. Those were all the medicines that we put in there. You can see the fire cider kind of right there. The bar of soap came from Share the Good Medicine. They're a company, she's from Standing Rock, and they live in Washington State, and they have a huge soap business. So we bought a bunch of soap from them to include with our bundles. Next slide, please. And here is the elderberry syrup, the soap, the fire cider, and the hand sanitizer. So that's what we put in our medicine bundles. Next slide, please. So the next thing that came out of this whole COVID response was fire cider. Fire cider was used at Standing Rock. It's food as medicine. And it was used at Standing Rock because of all the respiratory problems that people experienced while they were there. Some people, they spent the winter there, so they needed some kind of supplement for their cold and flu symptoms. So there was a lot of fire cider that was made in Standing Rock. And we, Ann Whitehat and TPZW Tolman actually were visiting. TPZW is the one that makes the soap in Washington State. So they were visiting about fire cider because they were doing fire cider all this time, and Ann was shipping it here. TPZW was shipping it to other places because she was making her own COVID-19 medicine bundles too. So she was shipping that out, and they got together and we visited about how can we get these medicines closer to home? How can we get the fire cider closer to home? So people don't have to wait for it to be processed and shipped from another state. We can just have access to it here. So the concept we had was to produce it right here on the reservation in our communities and distribute it here. So next slide, please. So here is, here's what's come of that big idea. This blue barrel is a 55-gallon drum. It's a food grade drum that we bought for several of our communities and organizations here. This is what we're going to put our fire cider in. And it's a huge barrel, but the first barrel was a pilot project. This is it right here. It was done in New Orleans, Louisiana by the Delta Roots people and Ann Whitehat. You see the barrel there, the wooden paddle next to it, like a big spoon. And then on the table there, you see all the apple cider vinegar that we use to process all the ingredients we put in the fire cider. So next slide, please. So this is the ingredients for a basic fire cider recipe. You've got lemons, garlic, oranges, avocados, I think. No, I don't know. Those are jalapenos. Those are jalapenos, some rosemary, maybe thyme, I think that's ginger in that plastic bag towards the top. You can see the onions in the purple bag and the black peppercorns there in the container. Those are the basic ingredients. Now you can add other things too, like cinnamon or chokecherries or chokecherry juice, something like that. Whatever vegetables that you like, or fruits even, like the citruses are really good to put in there. That's what you use for your fire cider. So next slide. This is where you have to cut everything up. Cut it all up until you see the oranges are like in little squares. The jalapenos are in slices, cutting it all up, the garlic, cutting all those things up to put in that big barrel. Next slide, please. And this is everything in the barrel. All the vegetables are in the barrel, and it looks like they've got some vinegar in there, but the vinegar should probably be over the top of the vegetables. I think they filled this one up halfway, and it took like 30 gallons of vinegar on top of all those fruits and vegetables you saw. It took like 30 gallons of vinegar to cover all these ingredients. So after it's covered, then it's covered with vinegar, and then it sits. And it can sit for a week. It can sit for 6 weeks. It can sit for, I know people have let theirs sit for 4 months before processing it. Because the longer you let it sit, the stronger it's going to be, right? Also, the hotter it's going to be, especially if you've got a lot of jalapenos in there, a lot of other peppers. People put other peppers like red peppers in there. So whatever kind of hot vegetables you put in there, that's going to determine how hot your cider is. Here's one that we processed in December. It's got all those fruits and vegetables in it, but it's kind of lost its color because all of the color, all the nutrients have been extracted by the vinegar. We use organic apple cider vinegar. So this one is ready to be processed. And by processing, next slide, please, you strain all the liquid out of the vegetables. So here is Anne and her helper with probably a flour sack full of those vegetables, and they're draining the vinegar out of it. So it's a long process to get the vegetables out to be left with just the liquid. That's your fire cider base. And after you get all the vegetables out, then you process your fire cider with honey. I think she said it took 15 pounds of honey to process all this fire cider in that blue barrel. So once all that is processed, then next slide, please. Then you've got your finished product. Put them in those little 8-ounce jars with a label on it and directions on how to take it. 1 teaspoon once daily, or a tablespoon, or as needed for relief. Some people will take a little, like those little medicine cups you get from when your little babies get infections at the hospital. They give you those antibiotics, those little plastic cups. They'll take a shot of like that size of that cup every day. And it helps to keep their innards healthy, their gut. It helps with joint pain because you've got those hot vegetables in there. Anybody who eats jalapenos every day can tell you that it's done a lot for their arthritis pain. So this is what we're working on now, is this fire cider project. We've got 4 barrels out in communities now. I've got 4 barrels I still need to distribute. We got vinegar a couple weeks ago. We bought a huge 275-gallon container of vinegar to fill all these 8 barrels that we're processing or gonna process. All we have to get now are the fruits and vegetables. And we have a tentative date of, I think it's April 9th for a fire cider making session in Mission at the Sicangu Food Sovereignty building there, right on Highway 18, past, it's past Wells Fargo a little ways. But we're gonna have an outdoor fire cider making session there. We're gonna fill up one of the blue barrels that we have with vegetables and vinegar, and then we're gonna let it sit. And then when we finish that one, then we've got to get all our supplies out to the other 7 barrels that we've got across our area. So when those 8 barrels, when those organizations or those individuals get their fire cider ready to process, then our idea, our vision is to offer these little bottles here for either distribution to low-income families, to elders, to sick people. And we also would like to keep this project going. So we're thinking of putting some of these up for sale in different retail places. We will offer them for sale online. And this is how our organizations are going to keep their fire cider barrels going. That's how they're going to fund the additional purchase of vinegar, vegetables, and these little bottles and labels, and the honey too, to keep this process going, to get this medicine out there. And so that's our idea. That's the project we're working on now. And I think Peter shared the website in the chat for the Lakota Wellness Society website. But if you want to help with this project, there's actually a donate button on there. It's a PayPal donate. But I guess if there's any questions, I'm kind of towards the end, Peter. So if there's any questions from anyone, I could try to answer those now.
Thanks, Vi. There's a question that just popped up from Michaela. She said, or they said, will there be announcements when you do the workshop for the fire cider? I'd like to help.
Well, the Sicangu Food Sovereignty Initiative will probably announce that event on their Facebook page, but we've scheduled it for April 9th at 1:30 in Mission. And it starts at 1:30. I'm not sure how long it's going to take us. The more people we have there to help us cut things up, the better. So, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be streamed on Facebook Live too, if you want to participate that way. But yeah, you're more than welcome. If you live around in the area, you're more than welcome to come and help, or come and watch and see how easy it is to make your own medicine.
Thanks, Vi. On Facebook, we had Faith Spotted Eagle just wanted to make sure that this was being recorded and said that you're one of their Braveheart Iṣaņati grandmas.
Yeah.
And then you have a huge fan section here. You have Nick White Swan said, Vi, love you. You know, I'm one of your biggest fans. But they're doing spring house cleaning, so they're gonna come in and out of the video. But I just wanted to share that with you while other folks think of their questions.
Sure. And I think that Racing Magpie is going to make this video available for the people who couldn't be on, because Ann White Hat wanted to be on to kind of help me, but she's taking a herb class, and she's in herb class right now, I think. So I don't know if she was able to come in and watch. So any other questions? If not, I'm right at the end here. I've got one more slide, and that slide is another project that we are hoping to get off the ground here this year. This is a picture of the hemp crop in Kiza Park on the Pine Ridge Reservation. This is Alex White Plume's crop from 2019. We went out there that day to help them harvest all that hemp. And it was a wonderful day. You can see me there holding that big hemp plant. Yay! And then they're all in that flatbed in the back. We pulled all that, I think it's two or 3 acres. We pulled all those plants out of the ground and took them to he had a different building for them to dry in. We spent the whole day out there. It was a real healing day. This medicine is cannabis. This part is the hemp that is under 0.03% of THC. So I think this was CBD quality hemp that he grew. There's different qualities of hemp, qualities of hemp. You can do industrial and make like ropes and bricks and things like that. You can do the medicine one for CBD oil, CBD salve, those kinds of products. Or you could grow hemp for food, hemp hearts. Different hemp ingredients are coming out on the market now, and people are really saying that they are really healthy foods. So that day, you know, I'm a grandma. Like Peter said, I'm a grandma, and I have my own share of health issues, like most grandmas do. And I have arthritis in my knees, in my hip, and I also have some hearing loss where I hear ringing a lot in my ears. That day we went out there, we were outside all day, and it took all my pain away. It stopped my ears from ringing. So I call it a miracle medicine. It can, just by being there and holding that plant, it really helped me to feel better. So I've got an application in with the Rosebud Sioux Tribe Hemp Commission. I've applied to be a hemp grower here on the reservation. I bought a little greenhouse with the organization's funding. We bought a little greenhouse that we're going to start some hemp plants in, probably for CBD quality hemp. And then we're going to plant some industrial seeds just like out in the open after we've started them in the greenhouse. And we're going to plant up to 1 acre of crop here this season. Depending on if I get approved for a grower's license, I've done everything they required of me, so I'm just waiting now. And that's another project that we'd appreciate help with. We've applied for some grants, but we haven't heard anything back yet. Some of the fundraising that Ann Whitehat's program has done a lot to help us buy supplies. So that's basically it, Peter. I don't have any more slides. I can answer questions all day if people have them, or anything. Here's our information again. The website address is in that picture, lakotasociety.org. You see our office phone number on there, and then the cell number over there on the right. So I think I showed you all my props, and that's basically it for me, unless someone has a whole bunch of questions they want to ask.
Yeah, if anyone does have any last minute questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll unmute you. I think my one question is, I know that some of the plants you talked about were ones that grow naturally here in the plains, and some don't. Some of the more recent ones, the citrus and those types of things. I wondered if you could speak to just how you feel that relationship with the plants that grow here naturally extends to, or has relationship with those plants and foods that grow elsewhere. That's a horrible question.
Thank you for that. No, it's not a horrible question. I appreciate it, Peter, because it, again, it goes back to, excuse me, we have to make a relationship with our plants. And for me personally, It doesn't matter if that plant is growing here or if it grew on a tree in California or Florida or wherever, or if the peppers grew in New Mexico or Colorado. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is how I'm approaching both the plants that are growing here in my backyard, the plants that are growing in the Black Hills, the plants that are growing on any rural areas on our reservation. If I want to harvest that plant for medicine, I have to approach it with that mindset. I can't have any anger or any fear or any of those lower emotions in me when I go to harvest these plants, okay? Because like I said, the essence of the plant, the consciousness, is what helps make our medicines potent. And it's the same way with the fruits and veggies that we buy in the store. Of course, organic is always the best, but on Rosebud, we can't really find organic a lot of the time. So we buy what we have access to. And even when you're processing those foods, like in the picture I showed you where they're cutting up all those oranges and peppers, you keep that mindset of good thoughts. You got to have good thoughts. You got to talk to those oranges while you're cutting them up. Ask them to help you with your sicknesses. Ask them to help whoever's going to drink that medicine that they're being put into those oranges. Ask the oranges to help that person heal. And some of those oranges might, I mean, if they're not organic, then they might have pesticides or whatever in them. But for me, it's really important to have a good mind when you approach medicine making like this. Because if you're putting anger and fear and all those things into that orange or into that turnip while you're cutting it up or harvesting it or cooking it, then you're putting that into your medicine. You're putting that into your food. And an example of that is some of you have a grandma who's really a good cook, or your mom's a good cook, or your auntie or your sister, they just can whip it out. I know my sister on today, Mulaney Stoneman, she's one of those cooks. She can make anything and it really tastes good. And it's because of her mindset when she makes that food. You've heard, oh, there's a lot of love in that soup, or I put a lot of love in that bread. And that's that good mindset that you have when you're creating that. You're putting all that love into your either medicine or your food. So yeah, Peter, it doesn't matter where they come from. What matters is how I handle it once I get it in front of me. I hope that made sense. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you. I see one follow-up question in the chat. Michelle just said, I lived in Mission for a few years, but I don't know where that food sovereignty building is. Just wanted some specific directions to make sure they get there okay.
That food sovereignty building is right. There's Highway 18. If you're coming into Mission from the west, you go past the first stoplight. You go I think it's 2 blocks, and it's a brown building right on the corner there. There's an intersection there. It's like a brown modular building, and there's like a big driveway in front of it. There will be canopies set up there, probably around 1 o'clock on that day when we're gonna have the cider workshop. Just look for those canopies on the north side of the highway. It's before the St. Thomas Catholic Church. So it's after Dakota Plains Legal Services Building, and it's before the Catholic Church. On the north side, it's a brown modular building with a big driveway. I hope that made sense.
I can almost see it in my head now.
Okay.
Michelle said, I think I know where you're talking about. Thank
Okay.
you. And then Heather, you should be able to go ahead and unmute and ask your question. I saw your hand was up.
Hey, bye.
Hi, Heather.
How are you?
I'm good.
I'm just trying to see how Ted and I can access your products to purchase.
You probably have to. We don't really have it online yet. I know that Anne has things available, but our work isn't really, we haven't really been working on our websites. And I know they haven't even created one yet down there, but I know she's been selling things. So if you email me or post on my Facebook Messenger what you want and your address, then we'll make sure to get it to you. Because I do have some things here. I just don't have a lot. They have it mostly down there.
All right.
I hope that helps, Heather.
Yeah. Ted will be getting a hold of you too. They have a huge, he's doing food sovereignty here at UNL.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you want to get in touch with him, but he posted his website up on there on the Facebook thing. So
oh, okay.
You look sharp, lady.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for watching, Heather.
Yeah, of course, I just found out about this.
Cool.
All right.
Glad you could come.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you.
All right.
All right. Any other final questions for Vi while you have this opportunity? All right. Well, I think here on Zoom, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and express your gratitude to Vi, I want to thank you all for joining. And on behalf of Racing Magpie, just ask you can follow up and look at it, watch the video again on our Facebook and on our YouTube videos. We're hoping to build take this amazing information and preserve it and share it even further. But go ahead, just express your gratitude, and we'll end up here. We'll finish up the video. Thank you so much, Vi.
Thank you, Peter. I can see you're all thanking me.